The death tour is the hardest tour there is in sports.
If you want to be a wrestler, the death tour is a definite way to prove to yourself and to others that you have what it takes. Problem is, to get there, it's not easy.
There's a duck semi blocking the road.
Said he'd been there till 2 o'clock this morning.
When wrestling does arrive to these very remote, isolated indigenous communities,
Just getting there now.
it's like WrestleMania, you know, in the reservation.
You got to perform every night. After 3 weeks of it, a couple of them, all of them, will crack.
Well, I became involved in the death tour when I did one way back on my very first pro wrestling tour in '89. And then hearing about it over the years, and everybody basically that ever made it out of Canada or didn't make it have done one of these tours. And obviously there's no serial killers involved. No one's actually dying, but mentally you could die on the road. Your testicular fortitude, as we say in the business, could die because it is so hard to do one of these tours. But, why would someone want to do it? And the reason is because it is almost a badge of honor if you come up in Canadian wrestling, or even in the States. I mean, there's been a lot of people that have come up from America to do a death tour, because it gives you a chance to get the reps that you need when you're first starting. But B, more importantly, there is such a legacy and a legend behind this tour that if you can do one and survive it and get a little bit of a name recognition from it, it could help you in your overall career. And like I said, it is almost a badge of honor to do one and to thrive on it. I think, when you're first starting, there's a lot of glamour that you expect. And that's one of the reasons. And I think the audience watching figures that as well, that, you get into wrestling and it's instantly working in front of thousands of people and millions on national television and making all this money and all this fame and fortune and glory. It's not really like that. There's a long process to get there. And I think that when you go through a tour like this, where there's so many matches in a short period of time, but more importantly, there's so much traveling and you got to deal with the elements, and it's frozen and it's storming and it's cold, and you got to set up the ring and take down the ring. And then you're sleeping on basically the gym floor and buying, peanut butter for $35 a jar. I don't think people really expect that. Like, this is wasn't what I signed up with when I ordered the pay-per-view, last week. And it really does kind of weed out the pretenders quickly. Do you really want to do this? And you can see all the time, not just in death tour situations, but all small time wrestling where guys and girls are like, this is not what I thought was going to happen. And you get, this is part of paying your dues. So I think that's why we really were intrigued to make the death tour, to tell that side of the story. And then also, not just from a professional standpoint, from a personal standpoint. Why do people want to even get into wrestling in the first place? And there's a lot of interesting personal stories being told in the documentary as well. So I think we're able to kind of serve both masters for what we all wanted to do and what we all wanted to show in this documentary. That stems from, once again, do you have the mental resolve to be a part of this tour, to really understand what you're getting into and to come out the other side? I think it's all part of your body of work. And I think when we were watching this film, the cool thing about doing a documentary like this, like if you're doing a Beatles documentary, you have all the footage and the story's been told. For Death Tour, the story is unfolding in front of your eyes, and I think that's something when you're doing a documentary, and I've done a few now, you really want to look at it from a storyteller standpoint. And it's like having a conversation, even if you want to go over here with the conversation, but it's not going there, and it's kind of a dead end over there, but it's really flourishing over that way, and you never really expected it. You got to pay attention to what's going on over here. So I took my own personal experience out of it, and the experiences that all of my peers have had. Like, it's not about that. It's about what experiences are these people having, you know, and there are some similarities, but there's also, you know, everybody's got their own story and everyone's got their own journey, and every death tour is different. They've been going on for decades. And this just happens to be the documentation of the tour that was going on while our cameras were there, and just all the interesting stories and the trials and tribulations that unfolded that we were able to capture on film and you know, edit in a certain way that made this tale very riveting. My highlights?
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the major highlights is having, you know, a documentary debut at Slam Dance. I mean, that's huge. I can't even imagine, from the thousands of movies that were submitted, you know, getting selected, you know, first round selection. You see that on all documents, first round selection at Slam Dance, you know, festival. That's a stamp of honor. You know what I mean? So I think there's a lot of highlights, and there's a lot of things that I do throughout the year, but this is something that I've never done before. I've never had a documentary, you know, make its debut at Slam Dance. I mean, the last documentary I did, I'm too old for this shit, about a obscure metal band that had a huge fan base in Germany. That one, we didn't go to the festivals. You know, it's on Amazon Prime now, which was really, really cool. But this takes that to the next step of actually being this festival type of movie. And like this one being, I'm working on 5 documentaries now, this one being the second one that I've done. I mean, that's a pretty good track record as a documentarian, you know, producing documentaries, which is, once again, like something you probably wouldn't expect Chris Jericho to do, but yet it's such a Chris Jericho thing. Why wouldn't I produce documentaries? You know, might as well, right? And so I'm just really excited about that. And, you know, it is a huge highlight for me on a mountain of many highlights. Well, we just filmed a documentary about pro wrestling in Vietnam, which I think is going to be amazing, for the same reason why the Death Tour is amazing, because pro wrestling can make dreams come true no matter what level you're at, and whether you're in a frozen tundra in northern Manitoba or whether you're in a sweltering jungle like Vietnam. Pro wrestling is kind of the bridge that connects cultures together, which you would never expect. That's getting pretty deep as to what, you know, on the surface wrestling is, but it's so addictive to so many people. And like I said, your dream can come true, even if it's just for a night. You know, we can be heroes even just for one day, as David Bowie said. And that's what we get with you know, the documentary I just filmed in Vietnam, and the documentary that we did right now, the Death Tour, is that it doesn't matter the size of the show. When you go somewhere and there's people that are cheering you, whether it's 50 people or 50,000, you're a hero, you're a superhero. And to get that on camera was just a really amazing moment.
That's what I live for.
If anybody that comes to this trip here, they can wrestle anywhere in the world.